Councilmember Wharton that we approve the minutes. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes. We are at item A5, which is to consider adopting a joint ceremonial resolution with Mayor Mendenhall recognizing and honoring the 100th anniversary of the League of Women Voters. I will turn the time over to Councilmember Amy Fowler to read the resolution.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And can I just say how awesome this is to have the privilege of reading this resolution and hopefully, which I imagine there wouldn't be an opposition to adopting this resolution, especially on today's Super Tuesday. So it's quite monumentous that, we women get to vote. And not only that we get to vote, but that we get to sit up in these spots as elected officials. So I just need to say that. This is a resolution recognizing and honoring the 100th anniversary of the League of Women Voters. Whereas the history of women voting in Utah is long and vibrant, and whereas on February 14, 1870, Utah schoolteacher Sarah Young voted in municipal election under equal suffrage laws and is credited with being the first woman to vote in an election in any state or territory now part of the United States of America. And whereas the U.S. Congress passed the 19th Amendment to the Constitution of the United States on June 4, 1919, guaranteeing American women the right to vote, which was ratified on August 18, 1920. And whereas Carrie Chapman Catt, a suffragist and founder of the League of Women Voters, led this state-by-state strategy that resulted in its passage. And whereas Carrie Chapman Catt spoke at the Conference of Women Voters held in the Salt Lake Tabernacle on November 17, 1919. And whereas the conference was sponsored by the Utah State Suffrage Council, then presided over by Utah feminists Emmeline B. Wells, Emily C. Richards, and others. And whereas the League of Women Voters is a civic group originally formed to help women take a larger role in public affairs after they won the right to vote. And whereas the League of Women Voters is proud to be nonpartisan, neither supporting nor opposing candidates or political parties at any level of government, but always working on vital issues of concern to members and the public. And whereas since 1987, the United States Congress has annually authorized the President of the United States to declare the month of March as Women's History Month. And whereas the League of Women Voters was formed 100 years ago on February 14, 1920, now therefore be it resolved that the Salt Lake City Council and the Mayor of Salt Lake City recognize the League of Women Voters as an important civic organization working for the welfare of all Utahns. Be it further resolved that the Salt Lake City Council and Mayor of Salt Lake City recognize the long history of civic engagement by the organization and its intent to pursue this work for the next 100 years. And it's signed by all of us. And I have to say, this right here makes me proud to be a woman from Utah. So,
Thank you so much.
we need a motion to adopt the resolution. And I will turn the time back over to you, Madam Chair.
So I would look for a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that we adopt the resolution honoring the League of Women Voters on their 100th anniversary.
Is there a second?
Second.
It has been moved by Councilmember Wharton and seconded by Councilmember Johnston that we approve this resolution. Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes.
And I believe at this time I'd like to present the resolution to some of the members of Utah Women League, the League of Women Voters now, and with the mayor, hopefully.
No. I'm just the.
They're the candid shots, Dan.
There is one on the Capitol.
There is? Well, thank you very much. Yes? Mr. Chair, I go on with this, correct? Okay. We will now hold the public hearing portion of our meeting. We have a few opportunities for public comment tonight, and we'll call people based on the comment cards that have been turned in. I will call people two at a time. The first person, please come forward to the microphone, and the second person, please be ready to follow. Comment time is limited to 2 minutes per person, and you cannot combine time with another speaker. As a reminder, please help create a civil and respectful meeting. Be respectful during other people's comments, no loud noises or other disruptions. Do not block other people's views with signs or other items. Allow council staff to help pass out any handouts that you may have.
Hey, Amy, for meeting with me today, and thank you, Mayor. And I just moved into Sugar House 2 months ago to be closer to the U health system. I'd like to mention, and I have all these lists of things, problems that's going on every day. But the thing is, that's the bad news. But the good news is everybody you drive by has a little piece of the solution to any of those items. So the thing is people you drive by at the grocery store, they have a little solution to suicides, to divorces, to everything like that. I had a couple of proposals that the city would change, which goes down to the connection part. If you go to mass.gov, which is the Massachusetts website, they have an easy menu bar in which you go living, working, learning. And each down, when you go over there, you have stuff like for living on children's and families, and for learning, you have job training programs, et cetera. But what I'm trying to do is suggest the city analyze how Massachusetts has it. And also, I'm trying to push for KUED to produce some shows with some actors on campus. Maybe they can get a house and they can have anybody from families who have small kids to anybody like that, and have some shows and then upload it to the website. But they're all, of course, I got 1 more minute, but the thing I'd like to see is the city also get digital signs up, have a partnership with some of the grocery stores, fast food stores. They would have the signs up, digital signs, and they would promote their own products inside, but then PSAs will come on and it will say that if you want to have any problems with
Time.
Anyhow, if you have any more questions, here.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Talon. I have to apologize. I started with the wrong comment cards. So, George, I'm sorry. You're not next. We're going to start our first public hearing with item B1, okay? And that's regarding the early notification text amendment. And the people that will talk will be Judy Short first, and then Cindy Cromer.
Judy Short from Sugar House. I'd like to thank you for honoring the league. I've been a member for over 40 years easily, and I've learned so much, and they're of value to our community. Regarding the notification ordinance, the Land Use Committee has several comments. We think you're doing a really good job of notifying recognized organizations. Too good, we get too many. Too many projects going on in Sugar House. But we have several requests. One is that the sign that's on the property that's put 30 feet from the sidewalk way back in the middle of a muddy field, and it's this big, isn't valuable. Nobody can read it. Nobody's going to walk through the mud to see what it's about. See if you can figure out a way to put that closer to the street. I understand you don't want people to walk off with the signs, but maybe there's something you can do to make that more efficient. Because I know you notify the people right around the parcel, but it could be somebody dropping by who lives a block away that would be affected by whatever's being proposed. And something else, the Facebook page. I didn't even know the city had a Facebook page until we started getting comments about a land use proposal. So if you can work it into the ordinance, or maybe make it an informal thing, tell us when you're posting something about our community on the Facebook page, so I can make sure I've got it posted on our website where they want to see the plans. Because often they're simultaneous, and I don't get them up on the website for 2 or 3 days. So that's just a simple thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Short?
Hi, I'm still Cindy Cromer. Things are not always what they appear to be, or more accurately in this case, they are more than they appear to be. This proposal was the one that Sherry Coffey, the former Deputy Planning Director, was working on at the time of her death. It has taken longer to reach you because of her premature departure. Secondly, the issue of notification was the Achilles heel in Trolley Square's expansion to the south. It wasn't the most important problem, but it provided a way to ask the state ombudsman for property rights for an opinion. We did, and he agreed with us. Number 3, the larger problem was the proposed use of the FBU-N2 zone in an historic district on a predominantly low-density block in an application that the city had never examined. So fast forward to where we are now. You have modified the FBU-N2. The Planning Division now examines the citywide impact of zoning changes which will be applied citywide, and they do that consistently, I watch. And finally, the repairs are almost finished with this ordinance. It's an example of how much effort is behind each item on your agendas. Thanks.
Thank you, Mrs. Cromer. I don't have any other cards, so if anybody else would like to speak to B1, okay. If nobody else wishes to speak, I look for a motion.
Madam Chair, I move the council close the public hearing and defer action to a future council meeting.
Second.
It has been moved by Councilmember Rogers and seconded by Councilmember Fowler. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And I'm an aye, and the motion passes. All right. Our second public, bless you. Our second public hearing is regarding an ordinance, Shore House Business District Design Standards Zoning Text Amendment, which is item B2. And the first person to talk about this is Cale Nilsson, and the second one will be Judy Short.
Hi, folks. Good evening. My name's Cale Nilsson. I'm a lifelong resident of this great city. I work for a real estate development firm in Sugar House, where we own, operate, and have built 3 projects. We love Sugar House. We think it's a great urban walkable community. We appreciate the efforts of the City Council and the planning staff and Planning Commission in furthering that, cultivating a good place to live. There's just one item on this proposal that I would object to, and that is the mandating of retail on the first floor along 21st South and 1100 East. And a couple reasons for that. Parking is an issue. What it does is it drives up costs in the projects. And when costs go up, rents go up for tenants, whether they be retail tenants or residential tenants up above. And that's not something we would like to see. The other issue, we've actually built a live-work unit, and unfortunately for us, it didn't work. It took us 3 years. It was a condo. It took us 3 years to try and sell it. And we ended up splitting it in half and selling them separately. So this, well, I think this ordinance is good in general. This piece really doesn't allow the flexibility in the future. If we have a difficult time economically, we may see a lot of empty storefronts because of more and more retail getting built by mandate rather than by the demands of the market. So, thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'm Judy Short. The reason we're doing this is because when the master plan was adopted, what got codified were the design elements for Sugar House Business District 1. But the Business District 2 design elements didn't get codified. And now we're at a point where much of the Sugar House Business District 1 property has been redeveloped and probably won't be redeveloped again for some years. So it's time to codify the rest of it. So this is for smaller scale Sugar House. So one thing we do not like is the maximum facade length should be 200 feet, not 300 feet. When you look at the longest building we could find of the new ones that are built, the Sugar House Legacy is 207 feet. That's a big, long building. To add another 100 feet is ridiculous. It's the size of a football field. So the smaller scale development should be smaller, not larger. There should be one active entrance every 30 feet, not 40. The area needs to remain walkable, not on the scale of a car. And we don't like live-work units on the ground floor as a substitute for ground floor retail. Usually it results in a curtained window, not an active window with something interesting to look at. Sidewalk width should be 10 feet wide. Most of our sidewalks, and we've measured many of them, are 4 or 5 feet and too narrow for pedestrians going both ways down a street. A walkable community needs welcoming, easy-to-travel sidewalks. If families feel jostled or pushed while walking, they won't come back. We need to remember we also want to encourage street furniture and trees, all of that on the sidewalks. So wherever we can, we need to be able to widen them to 10 feet. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Short. Next, Lynn Schwartz, and after Lynn Schwartz will be George Chapman.
While we appreciate the codification of design standards for the Sugar House Business District zones taken from the master plan, we feel that there are several proposed standards that do not meet the spirit of the master plan. The recommendation that frontage be allowed to extend unbroken to 300 feet is too long a distance. This would lead to a dehumanizing, looming mass of a structure, especially with the recommended 8 or 6-foot sidewalks and 40-foot distance between active doorways. The Sugar House Master Plan Business District Guidelines Handbook states that the mass and height of new buildings should relate to the historical scale of Sugar House development to avoid an overwhelming or dominating appearance in new construction. It also states that buildings should minimize shadows, and the mass of tall, densely packed buildings should permit sunlight to reach open spaces and should maximize mountain views. View corridors are needed in larger parcels. A 300-foot frontage meets none of these recommendations. Even now, with shorter frontages, Wilmington Avenue often feels like a tunnel. We do not agree with the recommended sidewalk width of 8 foot in the Sugar House Business District 1 and 6 foot in Sugar House Business District 2. One way to make walking uncomfortable is to make sure sidewalks will be crowded. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Schwartz.
I agree with the last two presenters, commenters. The Sugar House design standards you're looking at right now do not follow complete streets. Complete streets in the original Sugar House circulation and amenities plan from about 8 years ago suggested 12-foot wide sidewalks in accordance with complete streets. So I'm asking you actually not to approve this and to keep the public hearing open and to kick it back to staff and say, what happened to complete streets? It's an insult to pedestrians to not put in regular, respectful sidewalks. In addition, you only have ground floor mixed use kind of on Highland and 21st. That doesn't make sense. McClellan is the best example of why you need to have ground floor retail. If you don't have ground floor retail and restaurants, you're effectively pushing zombie buildings. Ground floor would be dead if you just have apartments. We have a lot of those like that. So what happens is when you're grilling meat, you're having a party, the party's on the sidewalk. That's not what we're supposed to be encouraging. We're supposed to be encouraging walkability, and if you want to encourage walkability, you need wide sidewalks and you need ground floor retail. This document does not encourage that. It does not meet complete streets. It does not encourage walkability, and I'm urging you to keep it open, send it back to the staff, and say you want walkability, and you want complete streets, and you want ground floor retail to encourage public engagement. That's what makes Sugar House, walkability. Please do not approve this.
Thank you, Mr. Chapman. Anybody else that would like to speak to B2?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I have a motion. I would like to move that the council continue the public hearing to a later date.
It's been moved by Councilmember Fowler and seconded by Councilmember Rogers. Is there any other discussion? All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion passes. All right. All right. Item B3 is a public hearing regarding an ordinance for medicinal cannabis text amendments. Mr. George Chapman is the only one that has submitted one. If you would like to talk to this, please see our staff right there. Thank you.
Ironic you used green cards for this. I'm against it. Do you realize you actually put a marijuana dispensary half a block away from the women's homeless shelter? I mean, come on. I can see some standards on marijuana dispensaries, but it shouldn't be near schools. I mean, you've done most of the work, but all of a sudden you put it allowed it right next to a homeless shelter. You don't want to put liquor stores or marijuana dispensaries next to something like that. You shouldn't be encouraging and enabling the obvious issue here, because that area actually has a problem. The parking lot of the workforce services next to it is a shooting gallery. So why would you want to have a marijuana dispensary right next to it? Because you're letting people know that, okay, you can go in for marijuana, but if you want something a little stronger, just go down the street. See, do you understand? I have no problem with the marijuana dispensary in the right place. That's not the right place. Please consider changing this to stop this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chapman. If nobody else wishes to speak, I will look for a motion.
Madam Chair, I move the council close the public hearing and defer action to a future council meeting.
Is there a second? It's been moved by Councilmember Johnston and seconded by Councilmember Rogers. Is there any other discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? The motion passes. Right, we're on to item B4. Public hearing is regarding a text amendment of the Historic Landmark Commission appeals. And I don't have any comment cards for that one. If nobody else wishes to speak, I'll look for a motion.
Madam Chair, I move the council close the public hearing and defer action to a future council meeting.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Rogers and seconded by Councilmember Johnston. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Next items, B5 through B8, involve grant applications that will be heard as one public hearing. Grant items include Fix the Bricks, Pre-Disaster Mitigation, Rocky Mountain High-Intensity Drug Trafficking Area, Salt Lake Metro Narcotics Task Force, 4 South Viaduct Trail, and repaving an addition of bike lanes on Main Street from South Temple to 300 North, bicycle lanes up Capitol Hill project. I would like to call Mr. Chapman.
You know how much I hate separated bike lanes? I hate them. But there are very few places in Salt Lake City that actually would provide a safe area for protected bike lanes. One of them happens to be Main Street going up to the state capitol. So the grant application you're pushing right now actually makes sense. Thank you. Finally, a bike lane, protected bike lane that makes sense. Ensign Peak is a big deal worldwide. People come here from around the world to hike in Ensign Peak. I think it's a great hike. I don't see why the world likes it, but they do. So I actually hear about and talk to bicyclists that are going up to Ensign Peak and trying to go back and forth on the Bonneville Shoreline Trail. The problem right now is this grant only goes to Capitol Hill, and if you go from there, where? It's very unsafe. So you need to work with the Capitol Preservation Board and try to get a bike path on Capitol grounds going up past the Capitol. Because if you use the East Capitol Boulevard, it's one of the most unsafe places around. Bicyclists actually drive and park there because they don't want to go there with a bike. So they park there and then go up the hill from there. So I'm asking you to continue this, go past Capitol Hill, and actually make it nice and connect with the Foothill Trails program. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Chapman. Anybody else that would like to speak to these items? Okay, if nobody else wishes to speak, I'll look for a motion.
Madam Chair, move the council close the public hearing and defer action to a future council meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Wharton and seconded by Councilmember Fowler. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion passes. We are at Section C, potential action regarding an ordinance, the draft Foothills Trail System Master Plan. And I will look for a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that the council adopt the Salt Lake City Foothill Trail System Master Plan.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Dugan and seconded by Councilmember Wharton. Is there any other discussion?
Madam Chair, if I might.
Yes, go
We
ahead.
heard some concerns last week, last
Yeah.
week, about this, and I know that Louis Cogan addressed some of those today in our work session, and they're written out, so those should be sent out to the public as well. I'm personally satisfied enough that we'll keep working on these things. I think there's some things that can be improved, but want to get this going and keep working on it as we go.
Great, noted. Any other discussion?
Just want to remind, Madam Chair, remind the public that this is just planning or passing the plan, that there'll be more details and more discussions to come as we fund and plan each phase of the plan, and I hope that people who came forward and expressed both support and opposition recognizing that there was a significantly more support, but hope that all of those people will stay engaged with the city while we move into the next part of this project.
Thank you very much. I look for a motion, sorry. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? The motion passes. We're at the comment section. So next, we're at the comment section of our agenda. Are there any questions of the mayor? And Mayor, thank you for being here, as well as Mrs. Otto, which is the chief of staff.
Madam Chair, may I?
Yes, go ahead.
I don't have a question, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to say thank you for your speech at the State of the City last night, and I truly look forward to working with you on all of your great plans and having a very collaborative relationship between us and you. And it's nice to all be on the same page with a lot of the things that you mentioned in the State of the City yesterday. I know our priorities of the council, and you did a great job, so thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Anybody else? Oh, all right. We are at item D2. We'll be taking general comments. I will call people based on the comment cards that have been turned in. Just like with the public hearings, I will call people 2 at a time. The first person, please come forward to the microphone, and the second, please be ready to follow. Comment time is 2 minutes per person, and you cannot combine time with another speaker. As a reminder, please help create a civil and respectful meeting. Be respectful during other people's comments, no loud noises or other disruptions. Do not block other people's views with signs or other items. Let council staff help pass out any handouts that you may have. And we have first George Chapman and second Cindy Cromer.
How do I put this? What the Leonardo did last week, I would consider to be evil, cold-hearted. I could not believe it, but I got to give credit to the mayor. You did what I think 99% of the citizens of Salt Lake City wanted to be done, and you took care of it. Thank you. Personally, I closed a Leonardo based on that alone, but that's me. I'd like to talk about 2 things. One, Allen Park. Hundreds of people in my area, in Sugar House area, are interested in trying to save the 7-acre Allen Park. You have the ability, you have the tools to provide that it stay a park. The heirs of that property want it to stay a park, but unfortunately it's in the court, and the court is trying for the most money out of there, and they're trying to put 63 residences there. It's one of the last remaining old forests that we have in Salt Lake City. So I'm asking Salt Lake City and the council to provide some kind of eminent domain or something to save that property, please. And finally, SB 214 is an anti-gambling statute that we need in Salt Lake City because the ballpark, Liberty Wells neighborhood has a crime magnet at 13th South, Wayne's Corner. We've heard about it for 5-10 years. Part of it is because of the gambling machines there, and I urge you to support Senator Maine's bill. It just passed Senate Business and Labor, but it needs support in the legislature. Only 1 more week to go. We need it here. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Chapman.
Hi, I'm Cindy Cromer, and I'm talking about housing again. You have a copy of my comments in front of you. 2 weeks ago, I had an appointment with Councilmember Fowler on the subject of housing. You'll remember my efforts with housing started in the mid-1970s. In addition to 45 years of experience, I am the queen of detours, shaggy dog stories, and trips into the weeds. Councilmember Fowler was far more focused during our meeting and asked me to name the 3 most important aspects of our situation regarding housing. Brilliant strategy on her part. First, I had to shut up, and then I had to think about the answer, and then I had to abandon all of my usual detours. 3 things. Here they are. with apologies to Councilmember Fowler for being redundant tonight, which I try to avoid. Number one, housing is interdisciplinary. I cannot think of any aspect of city government which is not related to housing. Everything from accounting to zoning, yes, A to Z. Everything that the city does is related in some way to the quantity and quality of our supply of housing. And we understand that homelessness is interdisciplinary, and we approach it with team members from different disciplines. We don't do that with regard to other types of housing. We don't consider them from an interdisciplinary perspective. Number two, housing could benefit from incentives. So could I as a landlord. They're currently virtually non-existent. And that's a topic for another comment that I'll work on. Number three, housing in Salt Lake must be data-driven. This issue is related to the myths that I talked about at my last comment, and to important aspects of the housing puzzle. If you buy into the myths and you avoid other disciplines, then you can ignore the data. And I put some suggested data that we could obtain on the back of your handout. I want to thank all of you for tolerating my ongoing comments about housing, and especially to Councilmember Fowler. Thanks.
Thank you, Mrs. Crummer. If anybody else would like to speak, please fill out one of those cards. All right. Well, there is no new business or unfinished business items. This brings us to the consent portion of our agenda, and I will now look for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
So moved by Councilmember Wharton and seconded by Councilmember Fowler. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. This concludes our formal city council meeting. This meeting stands adjourned.